Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katy Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewell. You probably already know that some listeners to this show support it with a monthly donation. People like Sarah, who recently joined us. And those supporters get access to bonus episodes. Today we're going to share with you an entire episode that happened in that special space. In that special space where we and the donors have a pretty good time together. We hope you enjoy it. This is a Bittersweet Life bonus episode. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
This is a bonus episode. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And today we have some pet peeves that we want to get off our chests. And Tiffany's going to start us off. What do you got?
Well, I saw a little, I guess you call it a meme on Instagram a while back, but it stuck with me. And it especially reminded me of my sister, but also in a little bit myself as well. And it was this. It was something to the effect of this. My life is a constant struggle between wanting to correct other people's grammar and wanting to have friends.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Uh-huh.
My sister is really like she's, for lack of a better expression, kind of a grammar Nazi. And sometimes it's like, you know what? Time and place, right? What we really want to talk about is our grammar pet peeves.
Yes.
I have worked for more years than I even want to admit as a magazine editor. And I know that there are grammar things that I mistake and that I don't catch. So I'm not saying like I'm perfect, but that kind of job, it has made me so extra aware of grammar, particularly written grammar, but even spoken grammar, that it grates on my nerves in a way that probably is too much.
Okay. I know. And you can have grammar pet peeves in two different languages.
True, although I don't notice them as much in Italian.
Okay.
Because it's not my native language. Every so often I do notice something in Italian, but it's rare.
So what's something that pops immediately to mind when you think about this?
I cannot stand there. Oh my gosh, there's so many. But one of the ones that's one of the really common ones is if I was Italian, I would, do this. But it's not if I was Italian, it's if I were Italian.
Oh,
Right?
I see.
It's a subjunctive mood.
Uh-huh.
And the subjunctive mood is not something that gets talked a lot about in English because it's very, very close to other verb forms. So you can kind of not even realize that it's there. But it is, if you want to be accurate, you cannot say if I was Italian. You have to say if I were Italian. And I remember being at a pub, and this is years and years before I worked as a magazine editor or was even a writer or even an aspiring writer. And I remember I was at a pub. It was sort of my first year in Rome, probably, when I spent a lot of time at this one particular Irish pub because I had so few friends and I'd made some friends there. And this Irish guy was kind of accusing me of being drunk in a friendly manner. And I said, if I were drunk, I would, and he's like, wait a second, you don't even have to finish that sentence because if you were drunk, you would have said if I was drunk, not if I were drunk.
That's very funny. What immediately pops to mind when you say that is a mistake that I have a problem with. It's not like a problem I have in day-to-day talking life, but if I'm writing, this always gives me pause and I can never remember what is the right way. And it's lay versus lie.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Because I believe it is you lay an object down, but you lie down. Is that right?
Right.
Sometimes you want to write like she lay down. No, she didn't lay down. But every time I have to be like, what is it? What's the right thing? And I don't know why, but that's one of those ones where I always have to double check and maybe Google it, be like lay versus lie, just to make sure that what I'm thinking is right,
That is a hard one. Yeah. I always think about that song because there's a famous old 60s song that gets it wrong.
Oh, there is.
And it's I don't want to sing it because I'm not even sure of the exact melody, but it's Lay, Lady, Lay
Oh,
across my big brass bed. Have you ever heard that
yes. Oh,
song?
I love that song. Bob
Yeah,
Dylan.
well,
It's a great song.
it's lie. It's lie. It's not lay across my bed. It's
Oh,
lie across my
but it
bed.
wouldn't be as good if it was Lie Across My Bed. I
Yeah.
don't know why. It just wouldn't be. And he's a
Yeah.
great writer. So he
I
probably
know.
knew. That was
Well,
probably a conscious choice.
sometimes I think people do in writing and poetry make conscious mistakes, and that's a different, I feel like, topic for a different day. But when
Okay.
you're doing regular speech or regular like magazine writing or, regular writing,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there are certain things. Okay, here's another one of my spoken pet peeves. I'm much stricter when it comes to writing, right?
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
get away with more when you're speaking, I feel.
Sure.
Um, this is, I think, worse than if I was a carpenter or whatever you want to. There's another song, right? Um, and that is, it's a similar situation. I think it's a subjunctive as well. If I would have,
Mm-hmm.
if I would have gotten up early this morning, I would have gone to the gym. No, no, it's
Mm-hmm.
not if I would have. It's if I had gotten up early or got up early, depending on if you want to use the British or the American
Mm-hmm.
past participle of get, right?
Yep.
If I would have got up early this morning. No, that is not right. It's if I had got up or if I had gotten up early this morning. That also drives me insane.
Uh-huh.
Insane. Those are
Mm-hmm.
my two biggies.
Those are good ones. Those are good ones. I know I'm a terrible offender at one that I'm sure probably bothers you. It definitely bothers my mom because
Can
she,
I guess?
yes, she has corrected me about this. I don't know, probably at least 500 times. And partly
500.
with good reason because, I am a person who talks on the radio and occasionally I talk on the radio on National Public Radio. And so she's
Yeah.
like, you should say things properly. But I just, for whatever reason, I rebel against it, and I just can't take it on. Do you want to guess what it is?
I think I know because it's the only mistake that I hear you make regularly,
Oh,
if at all.
okay.
And
Now wait, this is gonna be like, if it's something different,
if it's
then I'm
something
gonna be like,
different,
oh my gosh, what in the world? This is edge of your seat radio right here.
yeah, it's I got to admit, especially when I listen back
Oh
at the
no.
episodes, when I hear it,
Yeah.
I actually correct you out loud when I'm
Okay.
listening.
You don't like
I
fast
wouldn't do that.
forward. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no.
Oh goodness.
Let me think of an example.
I
And
feel like this is
I
gonna
know
be
that it's the
something
same
different.
thing.
I feel like it's gonna be different.
No,
Okay.
no. Because it's
My
pretty
heart
basic.
is
It's something that
pounding.
a
No.
lot of people do. Oh,
I'm
oh.
just kidding.
I don't want to make you feel bad.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready.
You say, me and her went to
Yes,
the
that's
cinema.
exactly it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can't say that. And it's not about the order. It's
I
not that you
know.
can't put yourself first. Technically, you're not supposed to put yourself first, but it's me. You can't
Yeah.
say me went to the cinema. That's an object. You have to use if you're
I
going to the
know.
cinema, you're the subject. It has to be I.
Yeah, I know. But it can't be like I and
And
Tiffany.
her as well. But her as well.
Yeah.
You can't say her. You actually don't even say me as much as it's her. You use her when you should say she.
Hmm. Oh, that's
It's not
interesting.
even the me. It's not even the me. So it's like let me. But that's basically what it is. So you know that. So
I do know it. I do
are
know it.
aware.
I am aware. And I would never write it. I would never
I
write it.
know. I know. I'm sure you wouldn't.
But it's like, maybe let's think about it as if it's a generous thing instead of a terribly poor grammar thing. Terribly poor. Speaking of which, terribly poor grammar thing.
That's not technically incorrect.
Well, I know, but it's
Terribly
also
poor
very
grammar.
awkward. One of the ones I used to say the most on the radio would be when I was talking about the host of my show and me. I would say me
Mhm.
and Steve. Me and Steve went. Me and Steve. Me and Steve. I always say me and Steve, and I'm like, let's think of it generously. If I put me first, I'm putting the emphasis on Steve. Don't you feel like me and Steve? Me and
For me, it's
Steve.
not about the order. It's not about, for me personally, it's not about the order.
Yeah.
It's about using the correct personal pronoun
Yes.
because
Which I get.
when it's a subject, you got to say he, she, I, not her, him, me.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because
It does. But
I wouldn't say Steve and me because that sounds weird, you know? Because it would
yeah,
be Steve and
yeah.
I went to the zoo, not Steve and me went to the zoo. But me and Steve went to the zoo. You gotta admit that me and Steve went to the zoo.
I wonder if people in other languages make these same mistakes. Because I always feel like in Italian, and I'm sure it's just that I'm not aware of these nuances, but I feel like in Italian, nobody would ever use like me instead of io,
Mm-hmm.
when they're using it as a verb.
Right.
But I'm sure they have other things. I know that a lot of Italians aren't very good with with the subjunctive mood. They use past imperfect. Like
Mm-hmm.
se andavo a scuola oggi, it's past tense if I went, but it
Yeah.
should be se andassi.
Mm-hmm.
There is a separate tense for it, but it's not so much the tense that's difficult to memorize, it's that when do you use it that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of difficult to understand. But I think most Italians, it's more laziness. They probably, if they were writing, they would do it correctly,
Yeah. They
I
do it like
think.
extra correctly if it was writing because they're so formal when
Yeah,
they're writing.
the business people are for sure.
I have another thing that bothers me, but it's not anything that would be in spoken word. And I guess that's
Okay.
probably why it bothers me because people would never say this aloud, but it's so common. And that is RIP, RIP, rest in peace. Why do we have to say RIP? Because I always read it that way. RIP XOXO or whatever. Just write rest in peace for God's sake or something. I don't know why. It really bothers me.
It bothers you. Well, I think I find it to be a little bit irreverent,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think because it
Because
reads as the word rip.
yeah, it reads as the word rip and it's so commonly like so cartoonish,
Uh
you
huh.
know?
Yeah.
It makes me think of like
The
I don't know,
tombstone and the yeah.
Tombstone in
And the
the Disney
Scrooge, yeah,
version of
yeah, yeah.
Scrooge.
Scrooge McDuck as
Yes,
Ebenezer Scrooge. Yep,
yes, with
totally.
the huge tomb that says "rip" on it. Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't. It is a little bit disrespectful, maybe.
I
I
don't.
mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm
I
sure it
mean,
doesn't mean to be,
it
but
certainly doesn't mean to be because it's like the kindest people writing it, and
Mhm.
but you would never just say, if you came to me and said, my father died, I would be like, "Rip, Tiffany." I mean, you just wouldn't.
No,
Rip to
you
your
wouldn't.
dad. It just sounds. I don't know. It's just. I guess that's why it
Yeah,
bothers me.
that's interesting. That's interesting.
Is it? Yeah, I don't know. And you see it so much because of social media. So many people like post on social media when someone has died. And so I think in
Mhm.
this social media age, you just encounter it more and more and more and more, And so it's becoming a bigger problem
Yes.
in my mind than it would have been 20 years ago.
Well, each and every has
Oh, yeah,
definitely started sticking out to me. I notice it all the time now.
I'm
I didn't
sure.
ever pay attention to it before, but now I'm like, wow, everybody says that.
I
Each and every person says
They
that.
do. It's like almost as if they can't not say it.
hmm
They can't not say it. I mean, even the president will get up and be like each and every morning, or it could be the Nobel laureate or something, and they're like each and
Yeah.
every day I wake up to I don't know. It is
Yeah.
the most common overused phrase.
hmm But not technically a grammatical error,
No,
I
it's
would
not.
say.
Well, I mean,
It is it's a bit redundant.
it's redundant.
But again, redundancy might be a flaw in style, but it's not a grammatic error, right?
True. That's true.
Here's another one of mine. Okay, this is more of a writing one
Okay.
because it's probably something that I wouldn't notice if it were spoken. But as an editor, I always cringe when I read these phrases, and it's the dangling modifier
Mm-hmm.
or there's another type of modifier. I can't remember, disconnected modifier. I can't remember what it's called, but it's when you say something like this. A modern, okay, this is just a random example that I'm inventing. A modern bistro. Okay, no. Okay.
I see where
I'm
you're
using like
going with this. I really
I'm
do.
using like a restaurant description because that's what I encountered most was like these restaurant descriptions where they're talking about the food, but they're also talking about the like ambiance of the restaurant. And they'd be like, run by the same family for 200 years. The dishes at this restaurant consist of, such and such and such and such.
Uh-huh.
So the modifier is run by the same family for 200 years or whatever it is. So that's the modifier. What is it describing? It's describing the restaurant. So the subject of the sentence must be the restaurant.
Yes. Yep.
It can't be the recipes. It can't be the dishes. I see that all the time, all the time. I mean, even in professional, really like substantially important articles in important newspapers, you see that in magazines. And I think a lot of people don't catch that anymore. It's kind of something that, I don't know, it's not on people's radar, not on at most editors' radars anymore.
Yeah, that's a good one. That reminds
And
me.
you see it in books too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, but you're right. The newspaper article in the magazine is the greatest offender for things like that, I think.
Yeah.
It made me think of something, and this isn't really a grammatical error, and I actually don't think that this is wrong. In most cases, I think it really works. But we all kind of have a tendency to, when we're giving examples, to give things in groups of three. I don't have an example because I didn't plan this out, but I just remember working with this one woman on a podcast, and it was a podcast that was made to like, we created it by me interviewing her, but I believe, and this was a long time ago, I believe I was mostly cutting myself out. So it's mostly her just talking, and she would always try to come up with groups of three. It's a great thing for, I don't know, I'll make something up. It's a great hike for grandparents and grandchildren and, dogs.
Dogs.
and sometimes she would only have two really good examples. It's good for this person and that person, let's say. But there's this feeling that you must give a third. And so then she'd cast about for what the third would be, or it would almost be a repeat of whatever the first thing was. And so I finally just said to her, it doesn't have to have three examples. You could just give me one. This is a great hike for grandparents. Great. Let's just leave it at that. I do think that that's a thing too. And I sometimes check that in my own writing. I'll be like, now you don't have to come up with three different things that the person is hearing. It could be just the cicadas and the macaques. I don't know. It could just be two things. It doesn't have to be like the breeze, the cicadas, and the macaques.
That's a very good point. Something to remember.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's not really a grammar thing. It's just something we also always do, like each and every.
Yeah. It's a matter of style. It's another one of those style things. Here's another one. See, I have a lot. The more I think about this, the more I come up with. This is another one that I think a lot of people mistake, and I think that they don't know that it's wrong.
Okay.
And that is, people use the word less when they should be using the word fewer.
Oh, yeah. That one's so common.
Yeah.
I use that one too, but I always catch myself with that one.
There are less seats in the front than there are in the back.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that I always say it under my breath, or if I'm not actually talking to the person who says it, like if I overhear it or if it's in a movie or something like that, I can't help myself. I have to sort of correct them, but I wouldn't do it to someone I was actually talking to.
Yeah. So you're just like,
unless it's my sister, then I would totally.
Then you would totally do it. And that is one of those ones that I wonder if one day the grammar will be changed to allow it. How sometimes that also happens where it becomes so common that the grammar changes to
literally.
Allow it. Like literally. I mean, but has the grammar changed that?
It's been put in the dictionary.
Okay.
As
meaning not literal.
Yeah, which is stupid because it's literally the opposite of what it means. You can't have it be the opposite and the unless you want to go for those contronyms that we talked about many episodes ago.
And literally still one of your hardest things. So when you listen back and you cringe when I say me and Tiffany, do you cringe when you hear yourself say literally?
I do.
Sometimes I cut that out. I think I've told you
I know you do.
And sometimes I can't get it out. And so it's just there like this tent pole. Yeah. And sometimes it's used in a very funny way, so you want to leave it in.
I don't think, do I ever say things like, my head literally exploded?
Yeah.
I don't say that.
Well,
I don't say
you would never say anything like that. But you frequently say literally when it wouldn't actually be a literal thing.
When it couldn't actually possibly be a literal thing.
Right. Yeah. I've done it too. I think I just recently did it I think I just did it in a recent episode, and I just left it. I'm like, well, you're not literally.
We all.
Oh, you know what it was? It was when we did the show about Japan, and you said I was a kid in a candy store, and I said literally a kid in a candy. Or no, you said you were in this candy store. You were describing being in this candy store, and I said you were literally a kid in a candy store, which Aurelia was.
I wasn't a kid.
But technically
Aurelia
you
was.
were not.
I was not.
But you were in a
Yeah.
candy store.
I think I remember when you said that. I was
I
like, well,
know.
literally, yes, I was a candy store, but no, not a kid. But
A kid at heart.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Because how could you not be if you're in a candy store? You know?
true. The last one I can think of
Okay.
is my mom, if she's listening.
She is a sporter.
She is. She is the offender of this. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone else make this error.
Uh-huh.
And I have started correcting her, and she is really trying. I have to give her credit. The last time we were hanging out, I kept, because it's something she says multiple times a day.
Okay.
And she said, this is what it is. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
But she says it in a way that like you can't hear the N that much. It's like, it doesn't matter. It could almost be a T, but I know her voice so well. I know that she's saying an N.
Uh-huh.
And I sometimes say, Mom, it doesn't matter, but you know that the word is matter and not manner, right? You know that, right? And she's like, oh, yes, my college-educated daughters always correcting me. It's like a different word. And the other thing she says, and this is not just her, lots of people say this. They say, I would have, but it's not I would have.
Yeah.
It's I would have.
Right. I would have. Yeah. I'm
Woulda,
sure I
coulda,
say that
shoulda.
one. Would have, shoulda, could have. Are there any words that you simply cannot say?
You mean beyond vulgarities?
Like,
Katy?
no. Only because I won't let you on this show. No, that you like cannot pronounce. No matter how many
That I
times you
cannot
try to say it,
pronounce.
you can't say it. I have an example, but I can't say it.
You literally can't say it. Literally.
Well,
Spell it for
I
me.
can if people keep saying it, and then I can say it. But for whatever reason,
Spell
I
it.
can't.
Spell it.
Here, I'll just say it wrong because I just cannot remember what it is right. This is an ocean creature. It's an anemone.
Anemone.
Anemone. Anemone. Anemone.
Anemone. It's
See, I
also
want to call it an
one of my favorite
anemone.
flowers.
I want to call it an anemone. But it's an,
No, it's
what is it?
Anemone. Anemone.
Anemone.
Anemone.
Isn't
yeah.
anemone better, though? The way I say it.
It sounds like enemy. It sounds like an enemy.
So what is it again? I'm never going to
Anemone.
remember it. Anemone.
Anemone. NMN.
I know how it's spelled. I just can't say it.
No, but I mean, just try to remember that it's like
Anemone.
it's
Anemone.
alternating consonants. NMN. Well, I know that word because it's one of my favorite types of flowers.
Oh.
Beyond, there's a sea anemone, and then there's the anemone, which is the beautiful flower with a very, very dark blue center and usually white petals. Sometimes they can be colored, and they're very beautiful. So that's funny. I have a word that I can't spell.
Oh, I have lots of words I can't spell.
I have a couple words. Like I have a word that I have, I write, I wouldn't say frequently, but regularly. And it's so bad that the spell check can't even figure out what I'm trying to write.
I have this problem all the time. So I know.
So my word is sarcophagus.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's a good one.
Speaking Italian has helped me a little bit. Because when you speak Italian, in Italian, these words that have the same root,
Yeah.
the same Latin root, in Italian, the vowels are so pure that you never pronounce a vowel in the wrong way. Like an A always sounds like an A, an O always sounds like an O. Whereas in English,
Yeah.
an O often sounds like an A, and an I can sound like an E. And they're like, what is it?
Yep.
So I'm a little bit better now, but I still struggle with sarcophagus.
Well, if
spelling
that's
it.
the only one, I think you're.
I'm sure there are more. I used to have a really hard time with necessary when I was a kid growing up, and my mom just was like, you gotta drill it into your head. And I got it. And the other one, I think it's the C's and S's is hard. It's hard for anyone, not just kids. It's hard to know when it's a C or an S. So the other word that's really hard for me, but I finally got it, is innocence. And I just had to be like, it's just two C's. There's no S's in that word. It's two C's.
Yep.
And there's one more. There's one more, but I can't remember what it is. And I'm pretty sure that I still mess it up. And it's an S's versus C's thing, but I can't think of which one it is.
Oh, it's a daily thing where I have some word that the computer is like,
I can't help you.
and sometimes what I do notice is that the search engines, and I don't use Google for the most part, can usually figure it out. So I don't know why the document can't figure it out, but sometimes I am alarmed at how far off I am. Where I'm like, wow, that wasn't even really close to what it. I mean, it started with the right letter, and even sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes with the first letter, I'm like, is it an E or an I? I often have that problem.
Like imminent.
Yeah, I mean that one I know,
is...
but yes, it's that kind of thing where it's like, is that an I or an E? I don't remember.
Oh, you know what you were talking about, the difference between lay and lie.
Yeah.
For me, it's effect and affect. Or the E FFECT and the AFFECT. Effect, effect.
For sure.
And I have discovered a good, and I have to use this little phrase when I'm writing this word to remember. I used to have it pinned. I found it somewhere. Like, I don't know. I found it on a little piece of paper, maybe a newspaper, and I cut it out, and I used to have it on my like bulletin board over my desk. And it has like a little image of an aardvark being shot with an arrow. And it says, the arrow affected the aardvark. So that's AAA. The arrow affected the aardvark.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next sentence, he shows his eyes really big. The effect was eye-popping.
Okay.
So the effect, the result of it was eye-popping. So the verb is with the A, and the noun is with an E.
Yeah.
So that's my little trick now.
That's good. That's good. I do want to share one example that Nancy sent in. We started talking about this because of other discussion that we also had on Patreon. And Nancy wrote, I guess it was like I was talking about the pet peeve of certain things. And she said that she can't stand when people say thank you in advance, which is grammatically correct. Mm-hmm. You can say thank you in advance, but she's like, I don't know why it bothers me so much. And I think I know exactly why it bothers her so much, because it says thanks you in advance, which means you're going to do this for me. Thank you. You know, it's basically like an order. It's like a thank you, but an order. Thank you in advance for getting this done by Tuesday. You know, and you're like, well, I was thinking more Thursday, but okay, I guess I'm doing it by Tuesday. Yeah, totally. I totally get that one as a pet peeve. Mm-hmm. And Adri was saying, she also wrote in and said that she just uses the word so too often, which from an interviewing point of view, so is my number one offender. You know, when I'm switching to a new question, I'll say, so when it came to your move to Rome, you know, and oftentimes I just leave it, but I can ask every single question starting with the word so if I don't pay attention to it. So that's great. So tell me.
That makes sense. Well,
it's a transition, but it also is like completely unnecessary.
But it's also a space filler. It gives you time to compose your next sentence.
Exactly. It's like my equivalent of an So I'm also me saying, that's interesting. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not saying it because it's not interesting. I'm saying that is interesting. But me saying that's interesting is me thinking like, but what is it about it that's interesting that I want to follow up on, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like, I am actually literally saying it's interesting because it's interesting, but it's interesting is also giving me the space to be like, well, why is it interesting and where do we go from here? You know? Mm-hmm. So that's another.
I was about to say that's interesting, and I stopped myself.
All right. Well, we should probably leave it there.
Probably.
Before we get too self-conscious. Now I'm thinking, is everybody listening to this going, oh, you know, she says this thing all the time and it just drives me crazy? Or you know,
well, you should tell us.
I really hate how she ends it by saying, let's leave it there all the time. Leave what where? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, we are grateful for you. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We really couldn't do it without you. And please do send us your comments. As you know, you can text us directly through the Patreon app. Send us your comments about all of this stuff, the whole thing, every bit of it.
Yeah.
Misspellings welcome.
We have started a chat, an open chat on our Patreon that is just for our Patreon supporters. But I know that not all of you guys are on there. So if you're interested in being part of that, download the Patreon app, because some of you might use Patreon just on your desktop, but there is also an app, and you can interact with us that way.
Yeah, you can also comment below the episode because we look at those as well. But yeah, would love to hear all that stuff. All right, we'll leave it there, and we will talk to you next month. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed that episode, consider supporting the show at patreon.com/thebittersweetlifepodcast. There is a link in the show notes. Your support is absolutely vital to the continuation of this program, and there are so many fun episodes for you to discover. Patreon.com/thebittersweetlifepodcast. And thank you so much.